Okay, so we're back to talk about stock options and restricted stock and how those impact the diluted earnings per share. Because when we give stock options away, that means people can show up and we have to hand them shares. Or if we've given them restricted stock, that means that once they finish their service period, we have to hand them shares. So again, got to figure out some worst case scenario. So let's start with the BE 2141 and see what it tells us. And I really recommend, again, the more you can just set your problem up in a table, then as you sort through all the information it's throwing your way, it's going to be a little bit easier. So man had 300,000 shares of common stock outstanding on January 1st. Okay, they didn't say throughout the whole year, so that means I'm going to have to probably do some work here. On July 1, an additional 50,000 shares of common stock was issued for cash. So they haven't given me the weighted average shares to even do basic, so I've got to do that myself. So they told us that January through June, we had 300,000 shares. That's half the year. On July 1st, we issued another 50,000 shares. So the second half of the year, I have 350,000 shares outstanding. Remember, with the weighted average, I'm going to look at how much was outstanding and for how long. So your percentages should always add up to 100%, or if you're doing it in 1/12, 3/12, etc., right? If we did this the way we wrote this on the board, it would say 6/12 and 6/12. When I do the math, that adds up to 325,000 shares outstanding for my basic calculation. Let's see, does it give us net income so that we can do our basic? Let's see. Oh, nope, it's just asking us to do the shares, so we won't even end up doing a basic calculation. So now let's focus on what we need to do to figure out the number of shares in a stock option. First reminder, a stock option is where I give somebody the right to show up and they will pay me a set price for a share of stock, and I will hand them that share of stock. Stock options can be powerful because the price of a stock option is usually assumes that the stock price will rise, but the option price stays the same. So in this case, we've offered up 40,000 shares that they can come to us and pay us $15 a share for. So let's say, okay, they show up and I've got to issue 40,000 shares. That's going to raise that diluted share count. Agree? But the treasury stock method says, hey, they're still giving you something. They're handing you $15 a share. And you should take that $15 a share and actually go back out to the market and buy some of the stock back. So if they handed me $40,000, if they came in to get their 40,000 shares at $15 a share, they would hand me $600,000. I could take that $600,000, and if I go back up to the problem, because it's kind of hidden, the market is trading at $20 per share, right? This is why all those people turned in their options. So I'm going to take that $600,000 and buy as many shares of stock as I can with it. And I can buy 30,000 shares of stock. So I will decrease the number of shares outstanding. And this is really logical, right? If I'm issuing shares, I get some cash and I'm going to go out and buy some of those shares back in the marketplace. The people that exercise their options, they've made some money, right? If they turn around and sell their shares the same day, they will have made that $5 per share. But that's not what this problem is about. All right, so that's how to deal with the stock options. You don't have any adjustments to the numerator. With the restricted stock awards, I got to tell you the truth. This one is just weird, the way that we do it. We're going to do it almost the exact same way. Let me just take out some of this info here so that you'll be able to see it. So we've got a numerator and a denominator. I'm copying this down. And let's see what information we have. West granted 5,000 shares of restricted common stock at the beginning of the year to company managers. They'll vest after 4 years of service. The net income for the year is $360,000. I'm going to punch that in. And there's 250,000 shares outstanding all year. Oh, good. I don't have to do a weighted average share calculation. So right away, I can get my basic EPS because there's no preferred stock, and my basic EPS is $1.44. For diluted, I've got to figure out how many shares I'm going to have to issue. Well, it says right here that I've granted 5,000 shares. And right now, the fair value of those shares is $25 per share. So let's think about this in terms of compensation expense. So I've got 5,000 shares at $25 a share. That's roughly $125,000 in compensation expense. We're doing this EPS calculation at the end of year 1. So I have 3 years of compensation expense left. So I want to figure out of this total comp expense number of 125, which was the 5,000 shares that I've given them and the current market price of $25 a share, how much of this compensation expense is left? And it's 3/4, right? So if I take this number, divide it by 3/4, oh, I did not do that right. Let's take this number, divide it by 4, and multiply that times 3. All right, so that means I've got roughly $93,000 over the next 3 years. So the treasury stock method says, well, even though you've got to issue 5,000 shares to these guys, that compensation expense is a little bit of a benefit to you, and you can use that to repurchase shares. That's a weird, wonky thought to me. It doesn't totally make sense to me the way it does with options where we're purchasing, using the cash to purchase back, but let's just go with it. So I'm going to take that $93,000, $93,750. I'm going to divide it by the current market price, which also happens to be 25. And that would say I will go out and I will purchase $37.50. So I'll issue 5,000, repurchase $37.50, and now I can calculate my updated diluted earnings per share. Make that prettier for you guys. All right, so next up, the final video that you may want to follow on to this is what do we do when we have all of these things happening at once, and how do we figure out where to begin?